They call me Bernadette, and I answer to it with a smile that's sharpened like a church lady's shears. I'm 67, American as peach pie and side-eye, and I do not faint in kitchens. Today, though, I nearly did for the comedy of it all. I must have a lover. I am a woman, I need attention. Your son also has a lover. Many families live like that. Only you are so right here, Georgia shouted at me, chin high, as if she'd caught me with my lover, and not I, her half-draped in a linen sheet on the guest bed at my beach house, smelling like someone else's cologne and salted tequila. I had never liked my daughter-in-law. Instinct has been whispering to me since the Nixon administration, and she set all my alarms ringing. But cheating on my boy after what he'd done for her, after surgeries and sleepless nights and a second mortgage to stabilize immigration paperwork when an attorney demanded cash? No, it was the kind of unfair that makes a woman's spine click into place like a rifle bolt. I wanted to call Dan, I told her, and I truly did. My hands were shaking so hard I could hardly unlock my phone, not fear, mind you, fury and blood pressure duking it out. That's when Georgia darted, she's quick, like a ferret snatched my phone, and hissed, "Don't you dare tell him. He just had surgery. This news will kill him." I looked at the woman who married my only son and saw not fear for Dan's health, but fear for her position. I saw calculation. I also saw my two granddaughters, Julia, 4, stubborn as a match, and little Sophie, 2, with jam on her shirt and a halo of pale hair standing in the hallway, wide-eyed. Children don't need to witness adult stupidity, so I did the only sensible thing. I took those babies by their hands, walked them to the car, buckled them in with the same steadiness I'd brought to every storm in my life, and drove away from the beach house without another word. But on the second mile, when the live oaks gave way to sunlight and my palms stopped sweating, I called someone who could ruin Georgia's life faster than I could. My fingers were steady then. I always dial steady when it's time to aim. Now, before your curiosity eats its own tail, how did I become a woman who can make one phone call and alter an adult's horizon? Practice and pain, and a lifetime of not waiting for a man to save me. You should know this. My middle name is Beatrice. My mama used it when I was in trouble, and my friends use B when I'm making sense of messes. I raised my son alone as Beatrice the serious, do everything soul before I let myself be Bernadette again, the woman with lipstick, appetite, and a wicked sense of humor about the way this world underestimates grandmothers. Dan's father left when our boy was 3 months and a mortgage payment old. He said he needed to find himself, as if he'd mislaid his personality under our baby's crib. What he found was the back bumper of his own bad decisions. What I found was grit. I worked 2 jobs, days as a bookkeeper for a plumbing firm, nights doing inventory at a grocery store, and I learned how numbers behave when men don't. I learned to be the first and last line of defense. And then there were men. Oh honey, there were men. Not all at once, mind you, but near enough that my mother-in-law, God rest that steel magnolia, used to bring casseroles and say, "Beatrice, you have suffered enough with that boy who left you, go on, find another. Someone kind. Someone who runs toward diapers." She'd practically shove me into dresses and out to dinner. "You need a partner," she'd say, and she meant it. She wanted me cushioned. She wanted Dan to know a man could stay. 4 competed for my attention in those hungry years. There was Clark, a contractor who smelled like cedar and kept his promises until one day he didn't. There was Leonard, a high school principal with a pocket-square addiction and a way of talking like he was narrating his own biography. He came with unsolicited advice and a suspicious ex-wife. There was, briefly, a jazz musician named Theo who broke my heart with a trumpet solo and a sudden tour to Montreal. And there was Henry, who seemed sterling enough until I realized he thought parenting was a spectator sport. Every man taught me something. Every man cost me a little sleep. Each time I went out, I left Dan with a kind young nanny and beat myself up for it after. The guilt was a thudding metronome. How dare you have a life? How dare you look for tenderness? I'd sit in the dark of our small living room, watching my boy breathe, feeling like I'd abandoned him for 2 hours of bad bruschetta and someone else's aftershave. For years, I was convinced love was a discount aisle where I was always 30 seconds too late. Then I stopped looking. I believe you should stop looking if you're not lucky in love yet. As soon as you stop chasing men, they pay attention. That's how I met Austin. On the third date, the third market, he leaned back in a booth at a diner that made mean waffles and said, "You will be my wife, because you are the one I have been looking for." Bold as brass, I wanted to throw a sugar packet at him. His self-confidence annoyed me until he proved it with action. Remembering Dan's school play without me asking, changing a tire without turning it into a performance, showing up with soup when I so much as sneezed. With him, I felt finally like a real woman who could soften without falling apart. Care, attention to detail, and love the essentials. I started waking up in a bed that wasn't wide and cold, but warm, with a steady man's arm curved around me like a promise. Immediately after our wedding, barefoot in my sister's backyard, lemon cake, a vinyl of Sam Cooke, my son brought home a woman. "Mom, this is Georgia," Dan said, nervous and proud. Georgia was an immigrant from Eastern Europe with cheekbones you could ride a sled down and English polished to a shine. She called me Mrs. Lawson first, then switched to Bernadette with a practiced intimacy. She played good girl like a concerto. Homemade pierogi, stories about her grandmother, eyes big as saucers when I talked about Dan's childhood. And quickly, oh, so quickly, she gained my trust. That's talent, by the way. Trust gaining is a skill, and like all skills, it can be benevolent or predatory. I knew the stories. I'd heard them at salons and church suppers. Girls who marry for papers, for place, for a new last name that opens doors like an American master key. I didn't want my son to become a suitcase for anybody's ambitions. So, I did what all overbearing mothers do when no one's watching. I learned. I asked questions that sounded like small talk and remembered answers like a detective. I traced her roommates, there were inconsistencies. I traced her first job, very briefly held. And then I found him. The man she'd been living with for months before Dan. He claimed she had borrowed his car, his family jewels, and finally the password to his online banking, which she used to move money for an investment. He called her charming. He also called her a thief. While Dan was out of town, Chicago trade show, kissing client rings, I met Georgia for coffee and made her an offer plain as daylight. "I'll give you any money you want," I said, sliding a check with more zeros than my early salary across the table. "Just disappear. Leave my son alone." She made a show of hurt. "I love my husband," she said, though the marriage license ink was barely dry. "We have feelings." I wrote the check for $100,000. She tore it neatly, eyes flat as a lake in winter. "I don't need the money." "We have feelings." I wanted to hate her, but something in that moment, the way she didn't flinch at the zeros, made me pause. Either she was a better actress than I'd allowed, or she really did want my son. I wanted to believe love can make a liar retire, so I did the next foolish, generous thing. With that same $100,000, I threw them a wedding worth a magazine spread. Dan glowed. Georgia cried gracefully. Austin held my hand through the toasts. A year later, Julia was born, and I wept into the crook of my elbow, grateful for the small weight that rehabbed my heart. 2 years later, Sophie barreled into the world like she'd been inconvenienced by the wait. Whenever Georgia traveled for work, I insured her with my time. I stayed at their house. I packed lunches. I learned the preschool teacher's favorite cookies so I could sweeten a rescheduled pickup. I mothered hard. I grandmothered harder. I wanted Dan's life to be a soft place to land because mine had been gravel for too long. Then the beach house. Then the linen sheet. Then the scent that wasn't my son's. Georgia, efficient, shameless, didn't just defend herself. She attacked. She had photos of Dan with other women, snapped by a private investigator she'd hired for peace of mind. They were ugly pictures. Conveniently ugly. They looked staged in the way real sins often do not. My boy's face in profile, a hand on an unfamiliar waist. A kiss that could have been a whisper from a contorted angle. My stomach flipped over. I was furious with my son if it was true, but I was angrier at her performance of injury while she still smelled like someone else's soap. I have one lover, she said with that glittering smile that doesn't reach her eyes. Now half of America lives like this. Why are you making a tragedy out of it? You will stick your nose in my affairs. I will take your house, your business, and even your husband. You saw how he looks at me. He undresses me with his eyes. Those last words, they hit me harder than the infidelity, because I had noticed Austin laughing too freely at her jokes, lingering too long at the sink beside her during family dinners, the way she calibrated a story to his attention. My husband isn't a fool, but he's a man, with all the freight that comes with the species. And Georgia is a collector of attention. She wants it stacked like bills. Shock tried to sit me down. I didn't let it. The difference between a woman who drowns and a woman who swims is a single, stubborn instruction. Keep moving. Book your tickets to Europe, honey, I told her the next morning when we met in the kitchen and the girls were busy drawing pirates at the table. My voice was the temperature water becomes when it turns to ice. It's time for you to return to your homeland. She laughed too loud and then she saw something in my eyes that made the sound catch. You cannot make me, can't I? I smiled, the way a woman smiles when she's already chosen the shoes she will wear to court. I picked up my granddaughters that afternoon from preschool, bought them strawberry milkshakes, and called the man from whom Georgia had once taken everything: his car, his grandmother's necklace, and the savings he'd stacked like labor in his bank account. He picked up on the second ring, and when I said Georgia's name, there was a pause so heavy it bent the air. I've been waiting, he said simply. Why didn't she need my $100,000? I asked him, mostly to check my own instincts against a stranger's pain. She already had $1 million in her account, he answered, and then told me how he learned it dumb luck in a shared screen, a flash of numbers that didn't match her hostess' salary or the myth she spun about a startup, $1 million. That explained her clean tear through my check. Girls like Georgia don't pick up crumbs when they're already seated at the cake. I pulled my car into my driveway and watched my granddaughters fall asleep in their car seats, mouths open, the kind of open that only the innocent and the truly exhausted know. I promised those two, in the privacy of my own lungs, that I would handle this carefully. No screaming wars, no ugly police scenes in front of them, but make no mistake, I would handle it. You see, I'm not just a mother, not just a grandmother. I am a bookkeeper who became a business owner, a woman who knows the difference between what people say they earn and how their money moves. And I know men who cannot be charmed by cheekbones because they've already been stripped of everything but their clarity. So I pressed record on the note app, the way a woman does when she's about to make a map for a long, careful walk through other people's lies. I opened my safe and pulled out the folder I labeled Long Game, and I dialed a second number, not a lover, not a lawyer, someone scarier, someone she'd never expect a grandmother to know. When he answered, I didn't waste time. I gave him Georgia's maiden name, her first address in the States, the last 4 digits of a debit card she once used to pay for a cake order that defaulted to my Square account by mistake. He took a breath like a diver. Understood, he said. Give me 48 hours. You have 24, I said, and hung up as the girls stirred, soft and warm and entirely worth the cost of my next move. That evening, Austin found me in the kitchen making soup I didn't intend to eat. He stood too close. You all right? He asked, and his voice was the same voice that had steadied me years ago. I will be, I said. Tell me the truth, Austin. Do you look at her the way she thinks you do? He flinched, which was answer enough, and then said the right words, something about temptation being cheap and marriage being expensive and men being idiots. I watched his mouth move and decided this wasn't the moment for that battle. One war at a time. First, remove the saboteur. Then, reinforce the walls. Then, decide if the king is worthy of the castle. I kissed my sleeping granddaughters and set them in their beds. I checked the doors. I stood in the quiet of my own living room and let every betrayal take its shape. My son, maybe not faithful. My daughter-in-law, definitely not loyal. My husband, human and fallible. Myself, furious and focused and very, very done with performing patience for people who treat it like an all-you-can-eat buffet. By morning, I had a plan big enough to buckle a less sturdy woman. It involved immigration timelines, asset trails, a borrowed Ring camera feed, and one bank manager who owed me his job from the last recession when I kept my payroll promises and he didn't. I poured coffee, black as intent, and sat at the table with a legal pad. I wrote at the top in block letters, Georgia, exit strategy. And then the doorbell rang. Not the bright, silly ring of a neighbor with muffins. The kind of deep, insistent tone that says, "Someone has brought you news." I opened the door to find a man I hadn't seen in 8 years, tie loosened, scar across his eyebrow from a bar fight he never regretted. He lifted a folder. "You called," he said. I came. Behind him, at the curb, a black car idled. In the folder, the first page was a printout, and across the top, in bold bank font, said a balance so outrageous it could only be true. I looked up, my smile small and bright. "Well then," I said, stepping aside, "let's send our girl home." The man at my door was named Rafe, which is short for Raphael but long for trouble. We met in the recession when I audited a construction firm that tried to pass ghost employees as consultants. Rafe was the only investigator who listened when I said, "Follow the petty cash, not the invoices." He did, and 3 executives spent a season in stripes, which is how a bank manager learned to answer my calls on the first ring. Rafe stepped into my foyer like he owned half the daylight. "You said the name," he said. "Georgia." I motioned him to the kitchen table, cleared of everything but my legal pad and a bowl of apples that were beautiful and tasteless store-bought, like certain marriages. "Before we fence with the law," I said, "tell me what's in the folder." He opened it with a flourish that would have gotten him slapped at a ladies' luncheon. 3 highlights. He slid the first sheet across to me. "Your daughter-in-law maiden name Georgiana, but currently Georgia is moving money between 4 accounts, 2 domestic, 2 in Latvia. Wire transfers every 3rd Friday, regular as tithes. Source labeled consulting and vendor returns." I didn't blink. "I have been a ledger my whole life." Second? He slid another page. "The ex-lover, the one who says she borrowed his car and morals, filed a police report 2 years ago but withdrew it after she threatened to expose some tax stupidity on his part. I talked to him. He's ready to refile and the evidence is better now, thanks to his sister who kept the pawn ticket for the necklace, plus a text thread where Georgia coached him on what to say to the bank." My smile tilted. "She likes to write scripts." Third, he said, and tapped the final page, "is a thing I will not email because firewalls are jokes and I plan to see retirement. But trust me, there's a man in her messages who is not your son and not her lover at the beach house either. He's older, he's careful, and he calls her psychic, which according to my dictionary is bunny, and according to my ex-wife means stop reading, you'll only get mad. Older," I repeated, because this was a new chord in the symphony. "Government older or organized crime older?" "I don't know yet," Rafe said, and for a man like him that meant, "I don't want to say until I can prove it 12 ways. But if you push the right pin, the map moves." We developed the habit of not discussing the grandchildren when plotting. Call it moral tidiness. I poured him coffee, black as confession. "Here's what we do," I said. "We don't break laws. We make laws walk. We coordinate 3 fronts: financial, immigration, and the personal." "The personal?" He grinned. "I prefer surgical." "Surgical is personal with better lighting," I said. "Listen, on the financial side, you take the X to refile. I'll call Simon, the bank manager who owes me so a suspicious activity report lands with a ribbon. Immigration, I book an appointment to clarify a family sponsorship issue. I'll bring documents, timelines, the check she tore up, and a photo of Georgia at the beach house with Mr. Margarita. Facts, not flames. And personal, well, that's me. I know where she keeps her dignity. It's parked in other people's admiration. We'll tow it. He studied me like you look at a weather radar right before a picnic. You're mad, he said with some admiration. I'm methodical, I corrected. Mad is loud. I am crisp, the girls patted in, hair smashed sideways from naps, cheeks like ripe apricots. Rafe's voice softened an octave, the way men's voices do around softness they can't bully. Hey, angels, he held up his big hands in surrender. I'm a friend. Sophie offered him the solemn nod of the under-5 diplomat. Julia asked if he could fix her pirate ship, which had lost a wheel on her cardboard ocean. He did, with a strip of tape that would have held a bridge. She bestowed him with a sticker. On Rafe's suit jacket, a Johnny holographic skunk. After grilled cheeses and apple slices, Rafe left with the folder and the skunk, and I phoned Simon. He answered in a whisper, as if bankers might be hunted for sport. Bernadette, how's the queen of the double entry? Raining, I said. I need you to pull SAR triggers on 4 accounts. Names incoming via courier, not email. Wire transfers in a pattern you'll recognize from that consultancy we buried in '09. A beat. Good Lord. Not again, I said. And Simon? You'll get a call from Rafe. He's rough but he's baptized. He sighed like supper had burned. Fine. But if this reaches regulatory ears, I will say you bullied me. Of course, I said sweetly. I'll bring muffins to the deposition. Call 3 was to an immigration attorney, a woman named Pilar who likes rules the way I like clean floors, obsessively. Marriage fraud is a high word, she cautioned after I laid out the timeline. And your son's children complicate matters. Us will not unmake the moon because you are angry. Angry, I said lightly. I am tidy. Georgia is not. I am offering the United States the gift of order. Pilar's laugh was short and involuntary. Bring me what you have. If there is a Ray adjudication path, I'll find it. If there is not, I will say so, and you will nod. Clear? Clear. I booked for Thursday, which left me 48 hours to stitch our quilt. That night, Austin came to bed late, smelling faintly of grill smoke and anxiety. He placed his hand on my hip and, to his credit, said, I'm sorry I've been too friendly with her. It's a rotten feeling to realize you've been careless with a person who looks to you for your example. I stared at the ceiling fan. Did you kiss her? No, a pause. I thought about what it would look like if I did, and then I thought about you, and I stopped. It was the correct answer, delivered without theater. I let the silence sit between us until it folded itself neatly. One war at a time, I said at last. Help me with this one, and then we'll pick up the other. He slipped his hand into mine under the sheet. Command me. In the morning, I set about being very boring. Boring is cover. I drove to preschool. I returned a library book. I made soup for Dan and put it in his freezer with labels that would impress a biologist. Don't lift anything heavier than your ego, the note said. He texted back a heart and a selfie of his stitched chest, pale and stubborn. I wanted to call him into my kitchen and show him the whole snake. I didn't. His heart had more literal problems than metaphoric ones, and I am not cruel. At noon, I visited the beach house with a roll of blue tape and a tiny camera the size of a cough drop. I'd installed the Ring camera in the front already, but the back door was George's favorite entrance for secrets. I tucked the new eye above the frame, fed it into the network with a password only a woman who remembers every former Wi-Fi she ever named could invent. Lemoncake1968. The camera wouldn't record anything illegal. It would observe public movement in and out, like a dutiful doorman who also happened to email me. On my way home, I stopped at a florist and ordered white lilies for Georgia with a card that said simply, Safe travels, darling. B. Petty? Oh, sweetheart. Strategic. A person who thinks you already know will confess twice. When I pulled into my driveway, a gray Toyota idled at the curb. The driver rolled down her window. Georgia. Big sunglasses, bigger nerve. You sent flowers, she said without preamble. Why? Because they're dramatic and you like to perform, I said, walking past her to the mailbox. Get out of the car. We can do this on the grass like sensible women. She slid out, heels stabbing my lawn like she wanted it to bleed. I am staying, she said. I have a husband and children. You cannot kick me out because you are jealous. Jealous? I laughed. Of what, exactly? Your balance sheet or your posture? Her mouth thinned. You make war with me, I make war with you. I take your house, your business, your husband. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. You don't know what I can do. Oh, I do, I said, and stepped in close enough for her to smell the peppermint on my breath. I know you can take the easy door every time there's a hard hallway. I know you can make good men feel silly and silly men feel like kings. I know you can count money faster than you can count consequences. What you don't know is what I can do. I smiled with my teeth. I look sweet. I am not. She blinked first. Always a tell. You will not tell Dan, she said, almost pleading for the first time. He is fragile. My son is a stubborn, recovering man with two girls who need him, I said. If you loved him, you would not have lied to him. If you respected me, you would not have come for my kitchen chair. I tapped the hood of her car. Buckle up, Georgia. Flight's boarding. She drove off with a peal that bored my ears. I went inside and wrote what my grandmother would have called a mission list. I like ink when days are complicated. 1. Deliver names to Simon via courier Rafe. 2. Meet Pilar with files and timelines. 3. Sit with ex-lover and coach him to tell the truth without vanity. 4. Collect school pickup footage from last April, the day Georgia couldn't find the car that she in fact loaned to her beach boy. 5. Ask Mrs. Klein at the preschool if Georgia ever asked to use the school's office phone for a fragile moment. Mrs. Klein notices everything and weaponizes nothing. She is gold. I was underlining number 5 when Rafe texted a photo. It was Georgia, in a navy dress I'd never seen, entering a glass building downtown that housed a consultancy I knew, through a client, to be mostly furniture and invoices. The timestamp was noon. The caption said, "Our bunny has a job." I forwarded it to myself, then to a password-protected folder labeled, with appropriate solemnity, carrots. At 3, I sat in Pilar's office, a spare room with windows that made the city look like a model someone forgot to dust. Pilar wore a white blouse and the expression of a woman who does not flirt with chaos. She charges at paperwork. I spread my exhibits like a magician's deck. She picked up each document with tweezers in her mind. Okay, she said slowly, after a long silence. On the merits, you have evidence of financial irregularity that could indicate unreported income or offshore transfers. You have a plausible claim that the marriage may have involved material misrepresentation to your son, but assist does not protect the disappointed, only the defrauded state. You have photographs of infidelity which are irrelevant to immigration but very relevant to character. And you have witnesses. 2, I said, and held up a third finger. Possibly 3. Do not threaten her with deportation, Pilar said sharply. That is the one thing you must not do. If a judge sniffs vigilante in these proceedings, your credibility evaporates. We proceed through proper channels. If a fraud detection and national security officer decides to review, that's their choice. I'm not a vigilante, I said, folding my hands. I'm a bookkeeper with good shoes. She smirked despite herself. Fine. We prepare a letter. We attach exhibits like polite fireworks. We request a welfare check on the validity of the marriage based on post-approval evidence. Meanwhile, you shore up your house. My house is shored, I said. It's my son's house that's made of toothpicks and hope. Pilar gave me the kind of look women over 50 exchange like currency. Mutual comprehension, interest compounded by years. Do you want a name for the older man? She asked casually, tapping the photo Rafe had texted. That consultancy, if it's the one I think it's a lobby shop that launders reputations for foreign clients who want American polish. The man who runs it is called Cole Avery. He collects ambitious women like cufflinks. Collects, I repeated softly, and tasted metal. Thank you. I left Pilar with a folder, my retainer, and a promise to behave. Then I drove to a coffee shop off the highway where men drink burned espresso and make important mistakes. The ex-lover, let's call him Marty, because that was his name, arrived in a suit that still had the department store pins in the jacket vent. His hands shook around the paper cup. I feel like an idiot, he said by way of greeting. Feeling like an idiot is the first sacrament of getting better, I said. You thought she loved you. You were wrong. Now you will be useful. We went over his statement like it was the Lord's Prayer. No embellishing, no revenge adjectives, dates, transactions, pawnbroker address. The texts where she said, I will return the car in 2 days and also change the bank password to something with numbers 1968, easy to remember. She was always neat with other people's messes. When he left, Marty hugged me like a man who doesn't hug women, then apologized for hugging me. I told him to go home and throw out whatever reminded him of her, yes, even if it was expensive, because we don't keep altars to bad gods. On my porch that evening, Georgia's lilies glowed like theater lights. The card was missing. My doorbell camera pinged. A slim figure, reaching, pocketing the note. Rafe texted, beach house tonight. Bunny has a guest, not the beach boy. The other one. Suit, tan, hair like a commercial. 9:12 p.m. I put on my softest shoes, told Austin I'd be out for a walk, and drove the slow way along the water, lights off for the last 100 yards. The little camera above the back door sent me a still. Georgia opening the door with a smile that could have dissolved an oath. The man behind her was older, elegant, the kind who thinks women are best when they're grateful. I didn't go in. That was not the night for heroics. That was the night for angles. I parked, stepped out, and recorded the license plate with my phone, whispering it like a catechism. Then I left because adults in their beds will convict themselves faster than any audience can. Back home, I found Austin at the table with a map spread out like he planned to invade France. He had his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose, the way I hope I look when I am cute and concentrating. 2 fronts, he said. You were right, financial and personal. I'll handle the house. Locks, passwords, the alarm code you still haven't changed since Julia learned the alphabet. Fine, I said. And I'll handle the story. The story? People pick sides faster than they pick facts, I said. Georgia has been telling a story since she landed. Hardworking foreign girl, cruel American mother-in-law. I am not giving her that ending. I'm giving her a different genre. Woman who bit the wrong hand and found it had teeth. At midnight, my phone pinged. A new deposit into one of Georgia's accounts. Not a transfer, a deposit. Cash at an ATM close to the beach house. I traced the location, the same block where Cole Avery's lobby shop held offices with more glass than God. My heart did that steady gallop that means the horse knows the trail. I slept for hours, dreaming of calculators and tides. At dawn, I woke to the smell of bacon and Austin in a t-shirt that made him look both reliable and forgivable. We ate like soldiers methodically with gratitude. At 9, I received a text from an unknown number. A photo. The lilies, crushed in a trash can. The caption. Bless your heart. The area code was D.C. So the older man had a sense of humor and a keyboard. Good. I prefer my opponents visible. I called Pilar and left a message. Add Cole Avery to the appendices. I called Rafe. Run the plate. I called Simon. Time to file the ribbon paperwork. Then I put on lipstick the color of a cease and desist and drove to my son's house with a tin of oatmeal cookies. Georgia opened the door fresh, bright, a touch of panic cloaked in vanilla body spray. Morning, darling, I said, and stepped past her into the kitchen like a woman who paid for half the appliances and all the patience. I brought cookies for the girls. She followed me, half a step behind, like a shadow that resented the sun. What do you want? Only everything, I said cheerfully, and lifted the cookie tin lid as if it were a hat. And I'm going to get it. Are you threatening me? No, I said, and set the tin down. I'm promising you. I lowered my voice to a thread. You will leave my son's house. You will not take a child, a chair, a spoon, or a dollar that doesn't bear your name. You will return to Europe with whatever dignity you managed not to pawn. Or, I smiled, bright as a bulb, you will stay, and we will do this in courtrooms and offices and newspapers, and I will outlast you because I was built by storms. Her eyes flashed. You cannot make me go. Watch me, I said. From the hallway, Sophie's small voice floated. Grandma? Pirate ship broke again. Coming, baby, I called, never taking my eyes off Georgia. Choose sugar, I said to the woman who thought she could peel me from my life like a label. Plane or parade? Behind us, the doorbell rang once, twice, like a drum roll. Georgia flinched. I didn't. I knew who it was before I turned the knob. Rafe stood there with a man in a navy suit, the Virginia tan, and hair like a marketing budget. Morning, Rafe said pleasantly. This gentleman left his congratulations at your beach house last night and forgot his manners to sign them. Thought we'd come by so he could practice. Cole Avery smiled like ice water. Miss Lawson, he said, putting out a hand. Lovely to finally meet, oh darling, I said, ignoring his hand and stepping aside so both wolves could smell each other. You're right on time for cookies. Cole Avery had the kind of handshake that tried to measure you while pretending to greet you. He extended it again, polished nails, watch worth a semester of college, and I took it, deliberately soft. Let him think I was the grandmother who wrote checks for bake sales. The slower he understood me, the faster I could finish him. Cookies, I said brightly, closing the door behind him. Rafe, pour coffee, would you? The good kind. We're civilized even when we're cross. Georgia stood by the island, eyes darting between us like a trapped cat. Cole, what are you doing here? She hissed. He didn't answer her. He smiled at me instead, the expensive, empty smile of men who have never been told no and believed it would stay that way. I came to clear up some misunderstandings. Well, I said, settling into the chair opposite him, I'm an accountant by nature. I adore clarifying misunderstandings. Rafe poured 3 mugs, stayed standing, body angled like a wall in a suit. Georgia fidgeted with her bracelet. The sound was a metronome for guilt. Cole laced his fingers. Georgia tells me there's been some tension. She and your son have hit a rough patch, and you've been, how did she put it? Concerned. Perfectly understandable. Mothers protect their boys, but I assure you, she's fine. We're friends. She consults for my firm occasionally. He leaned back as if he'd said something generous. Friends, I repeated. The kind of friends who meet at the beach house while my son is recovering from heart surgery? George's face strained of color. It's not what it looks like. It never is, I said. But tell me, Cole, do all your consultants work in swimsuits, or just the imported ones? He didn't flinch, but his jaw moved. Rafe smirked into his coffee. Cole cleared his throat. I think emotions are running high. If we all take a step back, you'll have time to delete your emails? I interrupted, smiling. Oh, don't look so startled. I may be 67, but I know metadata from malarkey. And I know the name of the shell company that pays Georgia's consulting fees. Same address as your lobby firm. Same pattern of cash deposits. The same for Fridays. For the first time, he blinked. You've been looking where you shouldn't. Oh, I always look where I shouldn't, I said lightly. It's kept me alive this long. Rafe set his mug down. Cole, you should know Mrs. Lawson here has friends in regulatory offices. If she whispers that your company launders foreign money through fake contracts, a few nice agents will come shake your tree. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Cole's smile stiffened. Are you threatening me, sir? No, I said. We're offering you an exit strategy, just like we did for Georgia. You'll terminate her consulting position, release a letter confirming her misuse of company assets, and transfer the necessary documentation to my attorney. In exchange, I don't let this turn into a headline about international fraud and human trafficking. How's that sound? Rafe added, you'll want to think carefully before saying no. I'm very good at finding things, especially hidden things. Cole's throat worked like he was swallowing glass. You think you can scare me? Not scare, I said, leaning forward. Educate. I've spent decades teaching men who mistake charm for intelligence that the two are not synonyms. I stood, slow and steady. And here's the lesson of the day. Never underestimate a woman who knows the difference between a loan and a liability. He rose too, but the power had shifted. You'll regret this, he said softly. Doubtful, I said. I keep receipts. He looked at Georgia. You didn't tell me your mother-in-law was dangerous, I supplied. She didn't know either. Until today, he left without finishing his sentence, and the door clicked like a period on a sentence I'd already edited. Georgia turned on me, voice shrill. You think you can ruin me, but you will ruin your son. If he finds out, it will destroy him. Better destroyed by truth than protected by lies, I said. I raised him to heal, not to hide. Her shoulders sagged, then straightened with something darker. I will not go back, she said. You cannot send me. Oh, honey, I said, almost gently. I don't have to send you. You're walking yourself there. She looked at Rafe, as if appealing to him for pity. He only shrugged. I'm married, lady, he said. And my wife makes better pierogi. When she stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows, Rafe exhaled. You sure you don't want me to call in a favor? Immigration can move fast when it wants to. No, I said. Let her run. It's more instructive. Fear teaches better than force, he nodded. You're colder than I remembered. I've had practice, I said. The next 2 days were an education in subtle warfare. First, Simon at the bank called. The SAR is filed, he said, voice low. And the Treasury boys will love this. You were right, money bouncing from a lobby firm into 2 Eastern European accounts, then into a domestic joint account under your daughter-in-law's name. Classic laundering pattern. Will it stick? I asked. Oh, it'll stick like syrup, he said. You may have just given Finson its holiday bonus. I thanked him and hung up, then texted Rafe. Financial front secured. Keep eyes on Cole. Second, Pilar called from her office. Bernadette, I'm submitting the marriage review letter today. I can't promise they'll open a case, but if they do, she'll be called in for an interview. You'll need to prepare your son. Leave that to me, I said. Third, Dan called unexpected, fragile. Mom, he said, Georgia's been acting weird. Did you say something to her? I told her to water her lilies, I said smoothly. How are you feeling? Tired, but good. Doctor says I can start light work next week. Georgia's been distant though. Keeps making calls in the garage. Says she's planning something big. I'm sure she is, I said, with a smile he couldn't hear. Don't worry, sweetheart. Rest. Let me handle the rest. After the call, I sat in the kitchen, the afternoon light slicing through the blinds like silver knives. I thought of all the years I'd spent protecting that boy, patching jeans, saving for braces, holding his hand through divorce and surgery and heartbreak. Love, for me, had always been a verb with muscle. Austin came in with 2 mugs of tea. How bad is it? Worse than she knows, I said, but it's manageable. He sat across from me, the corners of his mouth turning up. You enjoy this a little, don't you? I smiled. A woman has to find her joy somewhere. That night, while Austin watched a documentary about World War II men and their battles, I wrote emails. One to Pilar, confirming new evidence. One to Rafe, giving him the go-ahead to leak a rumor to an old journalist friend. Local businesswoman aids investigation into money laundering scheme. Not a lie, just vague enough to glow. Then I sent a message to Georgia. Subject: plane ticket. Body: it's booked. Thursday, Riga, business class. Don't make me waste the fare. No signature. 10 minutes later, the read receipt popped up. 5 minutes after that, my phone rang. Unknown number. You think you can scare me into leaving? She spat. You have no proof. I have proof stacked like pancakes, darling, I said. And syrup to pour on top. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, but you'll be in another time zone when I do. She hung up. Rafe texted. Plate traced. Cole's car. Lobby firm under federal review by next week. You're welcome. I poured myself a glass of wine, red, because white is for amateurs, and sat by the window. Outside, the street was quiet, leaves whispering like conspirators. I felt the calm that comes when the plan is finally moving on its own momentum. But calm never lasts long. At midnight, Austin woke me, holding his phone. "It's Dan," he said, pale. "He's in the hospital. Chest pain." The world tilted. "Where?" I demanded. "County General. They said he's stable but shaken." I threw on clothes and we drove through the empty streets, the kind of silence that only a M knows. At the hospital, I found my son pale but breathing, tubes trailing from his arm. "Mom," he whispered, "Georgia's gone." "What do you mean gone?" "She left a note. Said she was sorry. Said she'd explain later." And he swallowed that she loved me. I squeezed his hand. "Rest, darling. We'll talk later." When I stepped into the corridor, Austin was waiting with a grim face. "She took the girls." For a second, everything inside me went still. "What?" "Julia and Sophie," he said. "The sitter called the house to check in. No one answered. She went by beds empty, car gone." The room spun, but I grabbed the railing and steadied myself. "Call Rafe," I said. "Now." He did, while I stared out the window at the city that had taken my husband once, my peace twice, and now threatened my grandchildren. "She wants leverage," I said, my voice sharp again. "She thinks if she has the girls, I'll back off." Austin put his arm around me. "What do we do?" I looked up, my reflection in the glass hard and clear. "We hunt." By morning, Rafe had the trail. Highway cameras showing Georgia's car heading north, 2 child seats visible in the back. He traced her toll passes, her phone pings, her credit card use clever, but not clever enough. She'd used a motel near Richmond. "She's panicking," he said. "She doesn't have a plan. Just fear." "Fear is predictable," I said. "She'll go to the one place she thinks she's safe." Cole, he nodded. "Already on it." Austin drove while I called Pilar. "New development," I said briskly. "Georgia's fled with the children. We'll need custody filings ready. Emergency orders." "She's violating parental rights." "Jesus," Pilar muttered. "I'll have paperwork waiting by noon." We reached Richmond just as dawn broke, a pale, washed-out light, like mercy that had gone through the wash too many times. The motel was a sad little place that smelled of coffee and fear. Rafe was already there, leaning on his car. "She's inside," he said. "Room 12. Alone. Kids are fine." "You sure?" "Positive. I saw them through the window." "They're asleep." "She's packing." Austin looked at me. "What do you want to do?" I smiled faintly. "Let's go say good morning." We walked up the steps, quiet as judgment. I knocked once. When she opened the door, her eyes widened like she'd seen a ghost, and maybe she had. "Hello, Georgia," I said softly. "The girls need breakfast." She stepped back, words tumbling. "I didn't mean." I was scared. "Of me?" I asked. "You should be." Behind her, the children stirred. I walked past her, scooped up Sophie, brushed Julia's hair from her eyes. "Shh, babies. Grandma's here." Austin called the police while Rafe blocked the door. Georgia sank onto the bed, shaking. "I was going to call Dan. I just needed time." "You've had plenty of time," I said. "Now you'll have the laws." When the officers arrived, she didn't fight. She just looked at me, tears streaking her mascara. "You don't understand. I loved him. I wanted a life." "You had one," I said, "and you built it on sand." They led her away, and the door closed with the quietest sound I've ever heard, a sound like something ending. I kissed my granddaughters' foreheads and carried them to the car. Austin drove us home in silence. Halfway there, Julia asked sleepily, "Grandma, is Mommy coming back?" I looked out the window at the sunrise painting the sky the color of forgiveness I hadn't earned yet. "Not for a while, sweetheart," I said softly. "But you're safe. That's what matters." And for the first time in weeks, I believed it. But somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Because people like Georgia don't disappear quietly, and neither do women like me. I just didn't know yet which of us would strike next. There's a particular quiet that follows a storm, not peace, but suspension. The kind that makes you wonder whether the thunder's catching its breath or changing its mind. That's the quiet I woke to the morning after Georgia's arrest. The girls were still sleeping, small and curled, smelling like milk and safety. I stood at the kitchen window with my coffee and watched the sun crawl up the fence. Every color looked tired. Maybe I did too, but I wasn't done. By 9, the phone started ringing. News travels faster than sin in a small town. The officers had taken Georgia to the Richmond precinct, but she'd already called Dan Collect, apparently, and left him shaken. He phoned me, voice cracking like he was 13 again. "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" There it was, the sentence that could cut a mother clean through. "Because you'd have stopped me," I said quietly. "You should have. She took your daughters, Daniel. She left you after heart surgery and ran with another man's mess behind her. I wasn't about to wait for her to finish you." There was a silence on the line, long, bitter, adult. Then he said, "I still loved her." "I know, sweetheart," I said softly. "And you will again. But not her." He hung up. I didn't blame him. Love makes fools of the best of us. I've worn that crown myself. Austin came up behind me, pressing his warm palm to my shoulder. "You did the right thing." "I did the necessary thing," I corrected. "Rightness is a luxury." He kissed the top of my head. "You don't have to fight every battle alone anymore, don't I?" I asked, turning to face him. "You think the story ends because she's in custody?" "Honey, the story's just stretching its legs." By noon, Rafe sent me a message. "Cole Avery left D.C. early this morning. Private jet, destination undisclosed." Treasury froze to accounts. "You stirred the nest." I smiled. "Good," I whispered to the empty room. "Let the bee sting." Then I drove to the courthouse in Richmond, girls safely with Austin's sister. The arresting officer recognized me. It seems grandmothers don't usually command investigations. "Mrs. Lawson," he said, tipping his cap. "She's calm now. Wants to talk to you." "Of course she does," I murmured. "Guilt makes a fine conversationalist." He led me to a small visiting room, gray table, plastic chairs, one-way glass. Georgia sat on the other side, pale, mascara smudged like war paint. She looked smaller, but her eyes still burned. "I didn't take them to hurt you," she blurted the moment I sat down. "I just wanted time to think. Cole said he'd help me get me out before your lies ruined everything." "My lies?" I laughed, not kindly. "Georgia, my dear, your lies have layers." "They could host a wedding." "You don't understand," she said. "He promised me I'd be safe. And how's that working out for you?" I asked, leaning forward. "Cole's plane is grounded by federal order. He's hiding in a country that doesn't extradite to the U.S. He won't call you, won't visit, won't blink in your direction again. You were never safe with him. You were a pawn." Her chin trembled, but she straightened. "You think you won. You didn't. Dan will never forgive you. He'll hate you for this. Better he hates me alive than loves you sick," I said simply. She slammed her palms on the table. "You think you're so clever, so righteous. But your husband," he looked at me. I saw it. He wanted me. That hit a nerve I didn't let her see. I smiled slow. "Austin looks at dessert that way too. It doesn't mean he's going to eat it." She glared, shaking. "I hope you rot alone, darling," I said, standing. "I've done alone. It's not nearly as frightening as handcuffs." I turned to leave, but she called after me, her voice desperate now. "He'll call you. Cole, you can't stop him. He said he'd tell the truth that you blackmailed him." I paused at the door. "Oh, I hope he does," I said lightly. Federal agents love a good confession, especially when it's volunteered. The guard opened the door, and I walked out feeling taller. But by the time I reached the parking lot, my phone was buzzing with unknown numbers. When the third call came through, I answered. "Mrs. Lawson," said a smooth male voice. "Cole Avery. We haven't been formally introduced." "On the contrary," I said, starting my car. "I've been hearing about you all week. You're quite the busy man," he chuckled. "You've made my week more complicated than usual." "Impressive." "Not many women your age can shake the tree that hard." "Oh, don't flatter me, Cole. It's not age that scares you. It's competence." There was a pause. "We could make a deal, you and I. You're clever, connected. I could use an ally like you." I laughed outright. You think I want to trade recipes in hell? No, thank you. I can make you rich, he said softly. Money, connections. Let the girl go, let me walk, and you'll never have to work another day, sweetheart, I said, pulling onto the road. I haven't worked for money in years. I work for principle. You should try it sometime. He sighed. Pity. I could have liked you. Oh, you already do, I said, and hung up. By the time I reached home, Rafe was waiting on the porch. He had that look men get when they've found more bad news than they'd planned to. Tell me, I said, before he opened his mouth. Cole's firm was just raided, he said. But he's slippery. He's got friends high enough to keep him out of cuffs for now. And guess what? Georgia wasn't just some pretty side project. She was his errand girl moving money, charming donors. She knew things. Enough to burn him if she talked. So he'll want her silenced, I said. Rafe nodded grimly. Exactly. Well, I said, stepping past him, we can't have that. The next day, I met Pilar at her office. You look like you haven't slept, she said, sliding a file across her desk. I've been protecting the future, I said. Sleep can wait. Inside the folder were copies of immigration records, bank transfers, and the custody petition she'd filed on Dan's behalf. George's trial is pending, Pilar said. But if Cole interferes, he will, I interrupted. That man can't stand unfinished business. Then we get ahead of him, Pilar said. If we prove she was manipulated, her sentence will be lighter, but she'll be deported automatically. He, however, faces federal charges. It's delicate. I don't do delicate, I said. I do effective, she sighed. Just don't get yourself arrested, Bernadette, oh please. They'd have to catch me first. That evening, I was back home, the girls drawing at the table while Austin grilled in the yard. For the first time in weeks, the air smelled like normal life crayons, steak, a faint whiff of redemption. Then my phone buzzed again. No caller ID. I answered, already weary. Mrs. Lawson said, a new voice, calm, professional, female. This is Agent Fowler, Treasury Department. We'd like to thank you for your cooperation. Your information has been instrumental in the ongoing investigation. Well, I said, smiling faintly, I do love helping my country. There's just one more thing, she said. We intercepted a wire message from Mr. Avery's associate. It suggests a contract. Your name was mentioned. Contract, I repeated. As in the unpleasant kind. We're handling it. But please, Mrs. Lawson, be cautious. Avoid traveling alone. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the window where Austin flipped steaks, smiling like life was simple. Trouble? He asked when he came in. Just bureaucracy, I said. They never rest, but that night, as I double-checked the locks and tucked my granddaughters into bed, I kept hearing Agent Fowler's voice. Your name was mentioned. Someone had paid to see me silenced. Well, that was interesting. I set a chair under the doorknob, poured myself a whiskey, and wrote a list titled Contingencies. I'm too old to play victim. If Cole Avery wanted to send trouble my way, he was about to learn something no man has yet learned twice, that a grandmother defending her family doesn't wait for danger to knock. She builds the fire on the porch and waits for it to arrive. By dawn, my plan was inked and ironed. I called Rafe. I'm done being polite, I told him. It's time we visit Cole's friends before they visit me. He grinned on the other end. You've got something in mind? Oh, sweetheart, I said. I've got something in motion, and as I hung up, the morning light caught the edge of my coffee cup, turning it to gold. War always looks beautiful in the first light. When I say I've lived long enough to know the shape of trouble, I mean I can smell it before it rings the doorbell. That morning, it smelled like gasoline and ambition. Rafe met me at a diner off Route 29, the kind of place that still served coffee that could dissolve cutlery. He slid into the booth opposite me, tossed a folded paper on the formica, and said, he's in Baltimore. Private condo, 27th floor, security thick as thieves because they are thieves. Cole Avery, I said, stirring my coffee, still pretending he runs a consulting firm while funneling money for overseas clients. And now he's mad I ruined his favorite toy. Rafe nodded. He's scared. But a scared man with power is more dangerous than a confident one. Fowler says he's under surveillance, but you can't count on agents to stop a bullet if he hires someone desperate. I smiled. Rafe, darling, I'm not the one who needs protection. He is. He raised an eyebrow. You're planning something. I'm planning justice, I said, opening my purse and pulling out a small flash drive. And this is my ticket. You wanted proof he launders money through George's name? Here's every transfer, time-stamped and blessed by a banker who used to owe me a favor. Rafe whistled. How did you get it? Simon, I said. He called it a clerical miracle. I call it leverage. He leaned in. What do you want to do with it? Oh, I'm going to make Cole think I'm willing to trade. Trade for what? For quiet. Rafe frowned. That's dangerous. He'll smell a trap. Of course he will, I said. That's why I'll let him believe it's half real. He rubbed his temples. You're enjoying this, wouldn't you, after 30 years of men telling you to stay out of their business? He laughed. You're something, Bernadette. I know, I said, finishing my coffee. Let's go ruin someone's week. We met Cole that evening in the rooftop lounge of a luxury hotel neutral ground, public enough to keep him polite. He arrived on time, wearing a suit that cost more than my first house and a smile made of glass. Mrs. Lawson, he said smoothly, and the ever-charming Mr. Rafe. I was wondering when you'd crawl out of the woodwork. Don't mistake patience for cowardice, I said, crossing my legs. I've been collecting my thoughts. And my files, he gestured to the bartender. Scotch, water, I said. I like my mind clear when I dismantle egos. He smirked, taking a sip of his drink. So, what's this about? You ready to negotiate? Maybe. I slid the flash drive across the table. You transfer all offshore accounts back to your primary company, admit Georgia acted under your instruction, and you'll get this copy. You can then pretend none of this happened and retire somewhere sunny. If you don't, you'll what? Turn me in? I leaned forward. Oh, honey, I already did. I just haven't told them where the good stuff is yet. He studied me, his arrogance faltering for half a breath. You think you're clever. I don't think, I said. I am. He laughed, then low, dangerous. You're bluffing. You won't survive this kind of war. Maybe not, I said, standing. But you won't survive the one I already started. Rafe put a hand on my arm, but I shook him off. Keep your flash drive, Cole said coldly. You'll wish you never opened this door. Oh, I opened it years ago, I said. Now I'm just changing the locks. We left before he could reply. Outside, the city glowed like false hope. Rafe exhaled. He's rattled, but that was risky burn. He could come after you for real. Let him, I said. I'm ready. 2 nights later, I woke to the sound of tires on gravel outside my house. Austin was snoring beside me. I slipped out of bed, bare feet silent on hardwood, and peeked through the curtains. A car sat idling across the street, lights off. Someone inside was smoking. I watched for a full minute before the engine roared softly and drove away. Cole's watching, I whispered to the dark. By dawn, I had a new plan. Rafe showed up at breakfast. You texted code lilac. That's your big move code, right? It is, I said. We're flipping the board. He blinked. How? By making Cole think the feds already have everything. We'll leak the data anonymously through Fowler's network, but add one extra file, a decoy showing that he transferred stolen funds into a politician's account. He'll panic and start burning bridges. When powerful men panic, they expose themselves. Rafe rubbed his jaw. That's bold. Illegal? Not if the file's labeled anonymous tip and never touches my hands again. You really thought of everything, he said. Sweetheart, I've been thinking since the Carter administration. The leak hit 2 days later. Fowler called me first. Mrs. Lawson, she said, voice taut. Someone just sent us a massive file implicating Avery in foreign kickbacks. It's explosive. Half of D.C. will soil itself. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? I'm just a grandmother, I said innocently. What's a kickback? She snorted. Stay indoors, ma'am. He's cornered now. Cornered men are unpredictable. Noted, I said, and hung up. That evening, Austin grilled chicken while the girls ran circles around the yard. The world looked normal again. Until the phone rang. "Mrs. Lawson," said a voice I recognized too well. "Cole Avery," I sighed. "You must enjoy losing, Cole. It's becoming a habit. You think you've won? You're about to lose everything. I've friends who owe me favors, lawyers, judges, journalists. You'll be painted as a bitter old witch who fabricated evidence." "That's adorable," I said. "But do you know what sells better than your version? Wealthy lobbyist targets grieving grandmother. You'll be the face of greed on every network." "And I do mean every." He was silent for a beat. "You're playing with fire. Fire's my element," I said, and hung up. The next morning, Dan came to see me. His face was drawn, eyes red-rimmed but clear. "I talked to the prosecutors," he said. "They showed me the evidence you gave them." "Mom, it's bad. Georgia really did all that." "She did," I said softly. He sat down hard. "I don't know what to feel." "Relieved," I said, "and angry. Both are fair." He rubbed his temples. "I thought she loved me." "She loved what you could give her," I said. "Security, a name, a country. But love without honesty isn't love. It's strategy." He nodded slowly. "And you, how do you keep doing this? Fighting everyone, never resting?" "Because I've spent my life watching good men fall to clever women and clever women fall to lazy men," I said. "Someone has to hold the line." He looked up. "Thank you, Mom, for protecting the girls." "For protecting me," I smiled. "The kind that costs you tears." "Always, baby. That's the job." Later that week, the news broke. Federal lobbyist under investigation for international laundering. Cole's photo plastered every screen. Georgia's testimony had been used to corroborate the evidence. Apparently, she'd made a deal. Pilar called me first. "Your daughter-in-law flipped," she said. "She gave them everything. She'll serve 6 months, then deportation." "She finally told the truth," I said. "She saved your skin too," Pilar added. "Cole had a statement ready to frame you for extortion." "Her testimony killed it." "Well," I said, "at least she learned something from me." Timing. That night, I stood on the porch, watching fireflies rise like tiny absolutions. Austin joined me, arms wrapping around my waist. "It's over," he said softly. "Almost," I said. "There's always an almost," he chuckled. "You're addicted to the fight." "No," I said, resting my head against his chest. "I'm addicted to winning." He laughed, low and fond. "Remind me never to cross you." "Too late," I murmured, and kissed him. Inside, the phone buzzed once more, an unlisted number, a voicemail notification. I played it on speaker. "Mrs. Lawson," said Cole's voice, ragged but calm. "Congratulations. You've ruined me. But remember, fire burns both ways. Be careful what you light." The message ended with a click. Austin frowned. "You think he's done?" "No," I said, watching the horizon darken. "Men like him never end cleanly." Rafe texted a minute later. Avery skipped bail. Disappeared before the arraignment. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. "Well," I said softly, "looks like the sequel's already writing itself." And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled slow, deliberate, like applause. You'd think after dismantling a money-laundering ring, retrieving my kidnapped granddaughters, and teaching one predatory daughter-in-law the meaning of justice, I'd get a breather. But no, life doesn't give women like me clean endings, only intermissions between battles. Cole Avery had vanished like bad perfume in wind, but that's the thing about a scent like his. It lingers in the drapes. 2 weeks passed. The papers devoured the scandal. Lobbyists fled country under cloud of corruption. Brave grandmother helps federal investigation. I smiled at the last one a bit much, but I didn't correct them. You earn your headlines in blood and bureaucracy. Georgia's court date arrived quickly. Pilar called me from the courthouse. She took the deal, testified. She'll serve her time quietly. You won't have to see her again. Good, I said. Quiet suits her better than deceit. But that evening, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name written in a looping, almost familiar hand. Inside, "Bernadette, you think you've won, but you only wounded him, and wounded men lash out." I told them what I had to stay alive. Don't think I'm safe. And don't think you are either. Gee. I read it twice, then fed it to the kitchen flame. Some things you don't archive. 3 nights later, I was closing up my little office, the bookkeeping service I'd kept running even after retirement. Numbers calm me. They never lie unless you tell them to. The street was quiet. Too quiet. Then I saw it. A dark sedan parked across the road. Not the same one from before. This one was newer, slicker. Someone inside was watching. I called Rafe. He's back. He didn't ask who. Stay inside. Lock up. But I didn't. I'm too old to hide in my own life. I stepped outside, heels sharp on pavement, and crossed the street. The driver's window rolled down slowly. Evening, Mrs. Lawson, Cole. He looked worse, thinner, eyes sharp as a hawk and twice as hungry. You're hard to kill, he said conversationally. I admire that. I get that a lot, I said. Usually from people who regret saying it. He smiled without humor. You cost me everything. I lost clients, money, my reputation. Oh, sweetheart, I said. You didn't lose it. You spent it badly. He leaned back, fingers strumming on the steering wheel. You could have left it alone. Georgia was no threat to you. She stole from my son, lied to my face, and dragged my grandchildren into her mess, I said. That makes her my business. He nodded slowly. You think you're some kind of hero? No, I said. Heroes clean up after wars. I prevent them. He laughed softly. You think you've got leverage now? You're one woman, Bernadette. Alone. Oh, that's adorable, I said, pulling my phone from my coat pocket and tilting the screen toward him. The red light on the top was blinking. Say hi to Agent Fowler, Cole. She's on the other end. His eyes flicked to the phone, then to me. You bugged me? No, I said. I bugged me. Turns out, I'm a very good witness. His face hardened. You'll regret this. You've said that before, I replied. And yet, here we are, me standing, you sweating. He started the car, anger tightening his jaw. You'll never see me again, promise, I said. I might send you a Christmas card. He peeled away, tires shrieking, his taillights vanishing down the road like retreating eyes. I stood there until the night folded back into silence. Then I exhaled, slow and deep. Sometimes survival sounds exactly like quiet. The next morning, Rafe arrived with a grin that looked half exhausted, half proud. Federal boys caught him at the border. He used a fake passport. Fowler says your little recording helped seal the warrant. Good, I said, pouring him coffee. The man needed a long vacation, preferably behind reinforced walls. He sat across from me. You ever think about taking a break from all this? Maybe just be a grandmother? Garden, knit, yell at TV judges? Sure, I said, smiling. Right after I die, he laughed. You know, I think I finally understand you. Oh, honey, I said, patting his hand. No one ever truly does. The following weekend, we threw a small family dinner. Dan was still pale, still healing, but his eyes had softened again. He held Julia on his lap while Sophie tried to braid his hair. Mom, he said quietly as I set down the pie. I don't know how to thank you. You don't, I said. Just raise those girls to know their worth, he smiled. And maybe pick better next time. Exactly, I said. And if you don't, I'll handle it. You know I will. He laughed, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard since before the surgery. It filled the room like forgiveness. Austin raised his glass. To women who never give up even when they probably should. To grandmothers who scare lobbyists, Rafe added. To love that doesn't quit, Dan said softly. We toasted, and for a moment, the house felt whole again. Later that night, after everyone left, I sat on the porch alone, sipping bourbon and watching the sky turn indigo. Fireflies blinked over the garden like tiny confessions. Austin joined me, easing into the chair beside mine. You did it, he said. For now, I replied. There's always another wave. He took my hand. You ever regret not living a quieter life? I looked at the stars. Quiet lives are for people who trust the world to behave. I never had that luxury, he chuckled. You really are impossible. I prefer unbreakable, I said. He leaned over, kissed my temple. Remind me never to cross you, sweetheart, I said, smiling into my glass. That's the first smart thing you've said all day. A week later, I received a package in the mail. No return address again. Inside was a small box, old wood, carved delicately. Inside the box, a silver coin and a note. You were right about everything. Gee, no threat, no apology, just acknowledgement. I placed the coin on my mantel beside a photograph of my son and granddaughters. A reminder that even snakes can shed their skins, though you never forget they once had fangs. It's funny, being a woman of my age in a world that assumes you've retired from relevance. They think your battles are behind you, your fire spent. They don't see that you've just learned how to aim the flames. I still wake early. I still make my coffee strong and my decisions stronger. I volunteer at the library now, help other women start small businesses, teach them what I learned the hard way, that dependence is a luxury you can't afford. Sometimes I catch sight of myself in the mirror, hair silver, eyes sharper than they were at 20, and I think, Lord, you really did survive it all. And I did, not by being kind, though I tried, not by being cruel, though I could be, but by being clever and knowing when to smile while sharpening the knife. If I've learned one thing in 67 years, it's this. Justice isn't something you wait for. It's something you build brick by brick, fact by fact, lie by beautifully exposed lie. And if the world insists on underestimating you, well, let them. They'll never see you coming until it's far too late. When the wind shifts through the trees outside my porch, I swear I can almost hear George's voice, softer now, smaller. A warning, maybe, or gratitude. I don't know. I just nod to it, sip my bourbon, and whisper, I hope you found a little truth wherever you landed. Then I sit back, the night wrapping itself around me like an old friend, and I think, not for the first time, that if I'd lived a quieter life, I'd never have found this much peace. After all, I'm Bernadette Lawson, and I don't break. I burn just bright enough to light the way for whoever's next.